Was in Italy and Florence and Rome for about nearly 7 years all told. Came back to the United States and I just had a massive case of culture shock. When I left in 1969, people were fighting in the streets and there was all this struggle and the world was going to change and people had gotten up off their butt and were going to make a difference. The biggest shock was to see that people's attitudes had changed from being, uppity and let's have our rights to being compliant and being resigned. I think that was a strong turning point for me. It was right when punk rock was rearing its ugly head.
What made punk take off, I think, and so many people starting their own bands, it was very do-it-yourself.
It seemed like that music said anything is possible.
In '77, when it started to, gather momentum, especially in San Francisco, it was always more of an art movement than a music.
Anybody could do this. I could do this.
And a lot of the artwork at the time looked very much like the Dada period. Things just cut out of something else and slapped together.
From the very beginning, punk's visual art was deliberately simple, DIY. Anybody could make it if you had a demented enough brain. All it took was scissors or a razor blade and some glue, and you could make collages.
And go and slap them up all over the city. So I would make up bands that didn't exist. Bullshit names that were completely oddball names. And I'd make up the clubs too. There's no rat cage, I just made it up. Room 101, and I'd make them an address, that was a fake address. It was usually a vacant lot someplace. And then people, later on, I heard from people who would say, oh man, that was really a drag because we went down to that place to check it out. And there was nothing. Oh, I guess they changed their address at the last minute. Sorry. That was my participation. And then people who had bands would say, "Oh, yeah, we saw your flyers for the Dropouts. Where are they? Oh, yeah, they broke up. They're back in Cleveland now. Can you make a flyer for our band?" And so I kind of started that way.
We don't need anybody to paint us some Fillmore-type psychedelic posters. We don't need complicated stuff. We can just make it all by ourselves, and one wicked idea, especially one that's going to offend almost everybody who sees it, that's the way to go.
For me, the most dangerous bands were always the most interesting. The ones that scared my mom the most were the most interesting. And the Dead Kennedys were just like, she saw the name and was immediately, it was like, oh, great. It was scary, right?
A friend of mine who was working with me at the time said, she kept looking at my things, said, you should meet my friend Biafra. He's got this band. You guys think a whole lot alike. And I thought, well, then he must be crazy, because if I'm already half insane, then I'm not sure. But she said, no, you should check it out. And then finally, like a few weeks later, she said, here's this new 45. Give it a spin. It's California Ubralis.
And the Dead Kennedys we'd see all the time at this place, The Other Mass. And Jello was like, he was really wild.
Okay, this song is gonna end unless you turn off those goddamn lights.
So I sent off a postcard of one of my pieces, and he wrote back and said, send more. From that point on, we have been partners in crime.
He and I hit it off really well, really fast.
Many of the pictures that I did were things I did on my own, just because of my own, sour point of view. Then we collaborated on a few pieces. His style of collage is more like, pictures laid on top of one another, and then I'd add one thing or 10 things.
The artwork was just perfect. It was, it made sense. It wasn't necessarily political. It had this sort of vibe of being political, but it was more kind of surreal than anything.
And a lot of those pictures used to be on my bedroom wall when I was a teenager. Corrupt politicians making fools of themselves, dictators like Idi Amin, and idiot celebrities. So we were all cutting all these pictures out every week and putting them on our walls and realizing how funny it was, to have these pictures just sitting there out of context and then something else right beside it. Those Shriners in the parade on the cover to Frankenchrist, that was part of my bedroom wall too. And that was the one a lot of my friends laughed at first, was that one. Later, when I moved to San Francisco, I took a lot of those pictures down because I wanted to make a new wall, and I never wound up making the wall, but I had the pictures. And then when we were finishing with Fresh Fruit, I thought, wow, I should try and do something like this. And I was really inspired by the art of Crass and G. Voucher and the big fold-outs they made. And I thought, I know what I'll do. What if Crass was funny?
And mine was more like to cut things together so that they'd actually be interwoven. It's actually done to make it look like it was born that way. And that's a guy standing in front of a train hovering over Niagara Falls. I didn't know they built trains over Niagara Falls. Well, they can't, but you can if you use a razor blade and glue. You can suddenly change the whole world. That's why collage, I think, has a certain impact, because taking images from diverse sources shocks the mind, because we're used to seeing things in context.
And so I guess in a way, Winston and I to this day are kind of joined at the artistic hip, because his art is so associated with me and my art is so associated with him. Now, most of the collages I see, even the ones that are done digitally, they're done Winston style. Winston is the blueprint. I mean, he's probably the most influential collage artist of the past 40 or 50 years in the long run, maybe 100.
And then with Biafra too, a lot of times he would see pieces that I just had on the wall and realize that that's what I want to have for this new record.
The follow-up to Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables started with the art.
I was showing him some of my work, and one of them happened to be this cross of dollars, which I made a couple years before. It was like a real crucifix that I'd covered in dollar bills and just put the Jesus figure back on it.
To see this album cover that's got a crucifix made out of dollar bills, I was like, huh.
Biafra said, that's dangerous. I want to use that.
I was like, that is one of the best record covers I've ever seen in my life. Now I got to go make the record.
One night Biafra called me up and said, you know, so is there any chance you could do like an emblem? Even the word logo didn't exist at that point. Like an emblem or a symbol that would incorporate the letter D and letter K.
And then I thought, we needed some really simple thing, so simple that it could be easily graffitied. A sad example is the way Hitler and the Nazis co-opted the swastika and turned it into something that now scares the living daylights out of people on sight. I mean, I wanted something that powerful if I could get it. And I think Winston and I did have that discussion before he went to work on bringing the DK logo concept to life. It's like Coca-Cola or the Nike swoostica. As sick as it sounds, I mean, Hollywood tells you now, hey, Jello, you're a brand. You have to be careful about managing your brand. I'm not a brand, I'm a person. But at the same time, I recognize that that thing is a precious thing to be respected, used wisely. Always go for something that's going to grab people.
I wanted to deliberately create something that was going to be easy to make, that you wouldn't have to have an art degree to do. Evoke a certain kind of hard-edged, severe imagery. Dead K's are not known for peaceful, lilting melodies.
So this song is dedicated to Diane Banker Butt Liquor Margaret Thatcher Feinstein.
Curtis, go to the back.
The dragon lady with no fucking heart.
I spent the rest of the evening on my own at the table just drawing line after line, and sometimes I had a circle, sometimes a triangle, and finally came up with something that only took a couple of strokes of the pen to do. I started to line up toothpicks so I could make okay, what can you do with 4 toothpicks? And realized I could get this D and K together with a piece on the side with only 4 toothpicks. And that's what I called Biafra the next day and said, I've got it.
One line, X, another line, and there it is, DK.
I wandered over to the hall an hour or so later. At one point, I went back to the men's room, and all over the men's room was written DK logos everywhere. I thought, good, Biafra's been here now. It's so it's already been spread.
I put that logo everywhere, but my favorite one ever, which I got busted for, was I did it in masking tape on the lockers at school. This teacher grabbed me and, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, it's just a band logo. And the guy was just like, "What does it mean?" And I was like, "Oh, it's this band called the Dead Kennedys, And he's like, "The Dead Kennedys?" So I was just like, "Yeah, I don't know, it's the Dead Kennedys." It's just, like, how do you explain "kill the poor"? You could say, "Oh, it's ironic," but wait, is it ironic, or what is it? Is it just a joke? Because that's kind of a sick joke. But I mean, I don't know. Fuck, it's kill the poor, man. It's great. It's punk rock.
I'm glad it was easy to reproduce, because I've seen it on tattoos and on graffiti.
This kind of disease could be spread if you kept your logo simple enough.
I keep thinking, damn, if I had just gotten royalties off of tattoos and graffiti, I'd be rich. I don't think it's a totally genius idea. I don't think it's a masterpiece. It's just a little clever kind of angular symbol. I'm shocked that it still is around. I'm shocked that there's people who appreciate it, and I'm shocked that the movement actually lasted a whole lot longer than Hippy Dippy Trip or the beatnik scene. I think it shows you maybe that hate and aggression has more power to endure than peace, love, and and love beats. Still hoping that people will influence positively by it, and that people will continue to, utilize it as a symbol of stand up, don't sit down. And like I say, we may not win, but let's not go down without a fight.